Like notes through the hours. These are the songs of our lives. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Songs of Our Lives. I am Brad Rose. I am an artist, a composer, a writer, the founder of Foxy Digitalis, and somebody who thinks about music and sound far more than is healthy. Each week, I invite on a guest to talk about the songs and the music that has meant a lot to them and left its mark. Previous guests include Claire Rousset, Seth Parker Woods, Anna Butters. The list goes on and on and on. But this week, I'm so excited to have Nick Zanca on the show. His new album, Hindsight, just came out on American Dreams Records, and it's kind of like a low-key masterpiece. I'm not gonna lie. It's a record I was really excited about when it got announced, and it's one that the more I listen to it, the more I love it. It feels like such this like kind of really beautifully pure expression of who Nick is, like as an artist, as a person, and just it's really wonderful. It was fun doing this episode. Like, this is one of those episodes where it's just like, man, this is just like hanging out with a friend, talking about a bunch of dumb shit. I mean, not dumb, but fun, And anyway, it was a lot of fun. There is a kind of a special section here, thing that I don't normally do. So one of the questions that I ask in the Patreon section of these episodes is, what is a song that people love but you just don't get it? And Nick's answer, like, we went places on it and it was so good. And after we finished that question, he was like, oh man, this is just going to be in the Patreon section. People aren't not like, everybody's not going to get to hear this. Well, I'm going to move it into the regular section. We're going to do some fancy editing. So, you'll get a taste of that. And it's just, yeah. And you'll understand why. As soon as you'll be like, oh yeah, it should be there. So anyway, this was an absolute blast. Hindsight is out now. Yeah, hope you enjoy this one. My guest today is a musician, a songwriter, a producer, a writer, whatever that means. It's Nick. Oh, is it Zanca or Zanca? Shit, I just realized.
Okay, so I grew up with Zanca, but people have been telling me like Zanca all my life, and it's kind of a potato thing.
Okay.
I don't have the heart to correct people anymore. My dad's side of the family is about as Italian as the Olive Garden. So, I say Zanca personally, but
okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I kind of think I'm going to keep this in. It's Nick Zanca.
Brad, I'm so happy to be here with you. I've been such a fan for a long time, and it's great to do this. This is actually the first interview of this cycle.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's okay. Wow. That's pressure. Okay. Like, I'm just kidding.
They're gonna be fine.
I know. Well, okay. So the reason we're here, among other things, but the big reason is that Hindsight is your new album.
Yep.
And it's out on August 2nd.
It is. Right? Yeah. Next Friday.
On American Dreams. So this will probably air a week or two after, but that's fine.
Solid.
But one of the things, like, here's the thing I keep, like, when it showed up in my inbox and listened to it, like, I think it was in the first, like, email or whatever, there was the quote that was how this is the record you've been waiting to make. Like that. And I keep thinking about that. And
for sure.
And I'm like so happy for you that you've made it. Like, that you've made this record. Like, that's,
thank you.
But I kind of want to, like, talk about that a little bit, because, like, so how long have the ideas or concepts or whatever for this record sort of been percolating?
Well, the gestation process of it has actually, I think, really, the earliest recordings for this started in like 2020, kind of in the height of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Rogers, who is the guitar player in my band and the musician in New York that I have kind of the longest history with. We met on Craigslist and like moved to New York in the same year, and he's kind of
Amazing.
the Walter Becker to my Donald Fagen in this whole enterprise. But we started kind of with like a file share Exquisite Corpse, and that was what kind of became like the title track of the record.
Wow.
Um, and really like the formulation of the band and then the actual like recording process and stuff really started picking up at the end of 2022 into 2023. We did all of the basic tracking in a single day at Shahzad Ismaili's studio in Prospect Park, Figure
Mm-hmm.
8. Lovely room. I've worked on like a few different projects over there. But I would say that like the actual like concepts behind this thing, I mean, there are definitely like fragments of writing that even predate Mr. Lies, like stuff that I've been working on since I was like 18 years old. So like without being too like dramatic or on the nose, it does have this feel of like the project I've been working on my
Right.
entire life, you know, this kind of thing. But yeah, I wanted to, it was important to me. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I never really wanted to be like an electronic producer. The whole sort of situation in terms of like how I got involved in that sort of world quite literally fell into my lap. And it was, you know,
Wow.
this was in the, you know, pre Conde Nast days
Mm-hmm.
of Pitchfork and other publications where, you know, they were giving accolades and rising features to, you know, puppies
Right.
basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know, people with like very little experience. So I was kind of, you know, I really leaned into, you know, or what people were saying about, you know, oh, this is a rising talent
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
electronic music. And I literally was producing in Ableton for like a month or two
Wow.
at the time. So I kind of, you know,
Man.
in looking at this project, in looking at that project sort of in retrospect, it's kind of me learning how to produce in real time. And by the time we get to the like 2019 record that I like self-released, that was like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I can move on to
Yeah.
separate
Yeah.
things. I mean, I'm very privileged that I got the opportunities that I managed to get, and you know, tour
Yeah.
around North America and Europe. I mean, that was a massive education. I was also exposed to kind of the vampirical nature of the
Sure.
music industry and, you know, the way grift kind of functions. So I don't know, some of the younger artists that I work with in my life, like Lucy Liu, you know, I can kind of help field certain
Mm-hmm.
inquiries in terms of,
Right.
you know, and so it's definitely like an equal blessing and curse that, you
Sure.
know, it kind of happened that way. Um, but yeah, as far as this record is concerned, I think what it would only kind of came from, you know, having collaborated with a lot of people and kind of having a period of that and like
Mm-hmm.
facilitating other people's work and sort of looking inward after that and
Mm-hmm.
finding that I had a lot more to say over the course of time. So I have always sort of thought of this at the risk of, you know, I'm not trying to like compare myself to any heavyweights or anything like that, but I do kind of think of this as like a producer's songwriter record in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that like I don't know. It's kind of the whole Jim O'Rourke thing about like this is a songs record about songs records in a way.
Right.
So and that's not, you know, that's not meant to be like any mode of comparison, but it is kind
Right.
of like a field report in that similar sort of way, I would say.
Yeah. No, I mean, God, I can't even imagine like being a month or two into doing a thing and having all this attention thrown at you, and then And that's yeah. And it's interesting for me. Like I don't. So that period, I don't know what was that like. That was like early 2010s,
Early 2010s. I think the first EP that came out, the one with like False Astronomy and all those songs on it, was like early 2012. I released that like in the winter. Yeah.
So yeah, like I didn't know. Like I knew your solo work before I knew anything about your Mr. Lies stuff.
Word.
Like,
okay.
And so it's been, which is great for me. Or it's whatever. But it's like this
I would prefer that at this point.
I mean, but yeah, like I think about like the stuff that I was doing when I was like very like nobody has heard it. It's like on tapes in my closet that I don't even want to.
Yeah.
That's like feels like such a. I don't know. That's feel like a very vulnerable thing and a very easy way to. But I mean, I don't know. I still struggle with like imposter syndrome issues. But God, that would be like extreme.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like. I mean, it didn't necessarily feel this way at the time, because I was just like so lost in the sauce while it was marinating. But like I look back on it and it's kind of like I was wearing a drag or something. Yeah. I mean, I love electronic music and, Burial and Wicker and that whole history of that. I mean, some of the picks that we'll get into will kind of talk about my like love-hate relationship with all of that stuff. But, I definitely feel a lot more aligned with, the collaborators and, kind of the musical landscape that I'm working in now. And it took me, a little bit over a decade to get there. And that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles in a way, And
in some way, I mean, on some ways that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 30, I'm 31. Like I have the world ahead of me.
Yeah. I mean, I was having a conversation the other day that I feel like in the last few years I've been making art and music like the most me stuff I've ever done. Good. And I'm 45, so it took me a lot. But it's like I feel great about it. I'm like, hey, whatever, it's you get there when you get there. Yeah, and maybe you don't even get there actually, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I mean, how great is it that we're both kind of in that spot now?
I know. Yeah,
definitely.
I'm a couple, 5 years ago, I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life.
For sure.
Well, I am curious, like just making this record. Were there any, like, I don't know, what surprised you the most, or were there any like really like stories or moments that stand out to you during the, like, I mean, like the recording process or even just the writing process?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me, this was really the first project of mine where I very explicitly compartmentalized all of the stages of the process of making the thing. In the Mr. Lies days, writing, recording, mixing, arranging, this was all just kind of one giant soup that would happen at the same time. And it kind of felt a little bit like there was like no end in sight when things sort of work that way. But I think the intention and the pride that I feel behind this body of work, I think it mainly kind of emerges from, really like cordoning off each part of the process. Pretty much like, so like, I started writing these songs either at the Wurlitzer or, the acoustic guitar. And only after that did I like assemble like the core quartet that plays on the record. So that's me, Steven Rogers, a bass player named Lexi Bodick, and a drummer named Sarah Galdes. So that recording was really like kind of the four of us. And, we kind of opted for a socialized arrangement sort of style. It was important for me. It's important for me with any collaboration to get like other people's voices in there and not feel like I'm imparting my whole, thing
Do
into
this
it.
right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever want to. I feel like I want to leave a lot of the megalomania that I felt with kind of my former project. So yeah, it started. So we did like all of the basic tracking at Figure Eight over the course of that day. That session also included Ben Chapito Katz, who plays in Lorraine, who is the sax player on this record, who showed up hungover to the session and knocked it out of the park.
True pro.
Yeah, exactly. And after that, kind of the more like auxiliary electronics and, kind of like improvisations sort of came out of that. I recorded with Wendy Eisenberg, my best bud, in Long Island, and they did
who wrote great like liner notes or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I cried totally when I when I first read that. Like comparing me to Stephen Sondheim, like fuck off. I'm never gonna write that down. But yeah, like they recorded themselves doing like the Derek Bailey thing when we were doing like kind of a retreat session in Long Island. And then I think Mari was the last person to be brought into the mix, kind of right as they were moving to New York, and did all of the like pedal steel takes and strings that are on the record. And I think we wrapped it up around October of last year. And then I ended up like putting finishing touches on it in France in February, where I mastered it with my longtime guy. Yeah, here we are.
So, I mean, the record's not out for another week, but all of this building up, like, how does it feel for it to know it's like it's going to be out there?
I'm very excited. I'm not trying to drown too much in the seas of self-perception, because the fact of the matter is there's like other moving parts in my life right now. And like other projects that I'm working on, which is, kind of by design. It used to be that I would be so lost in the rollout of like a record and like completely immersed. And I think I've just been doing this long enough at this point that that's no longer really like a factor.
Right.
Like it's out of my hands. If people are going to hear it and vibe, great. If they don't, maybe I'll be the tree that falls in the forest, and then in a few years we can see where we're at.
Yeah, that's good. That's like, that was a big learning process for me, was getting, like you can make the greatest record ever and nobody could give a shit. And
definitely.
And it has nothing to do with you or anything. It's, nature.
The important thing, I think, for me, is, the thing that people keep saying when they hear it is like, Nick, this is the most you project that I've heard of yours. And that's the only thing that matters to me at this point.
That's like the best. That's the best feeling, is when people who know you tell you, this is you. Oh man. Like I hear you on here.
Definitely.
So, well, I keep going on about this, but then the show would be like 3 hours long, and ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah.
But I will say that I really love the record, and the more I've listened to it, the more it's kind of even opened up. And I think it's a really remarkable record, and I applaud. It's, like you said, like I don't know you like real well or anything, but this sounds like, this seems like the record from. And also, like, seeing your list of songs, it's like, oh yeah, this is the record you've been wanting to make.
Goodness. Well, thank you. I really fucking appreciate that. Thanks.
And with that, let's segue into this whole thing here. Right? And as ever, we are going to start with, what is the first song that you remember?
Okay, so I had to rack my brain for this because as a media saturated 90s baby, I was definitely raised on VHS tapes
Mm-hmm.
before I got into recordings. I mean, naturally, my parents got me into the Beatles and Queen. My dad was very into like Joe Cocker and bands with horn sections and stuff. But before all of that, I was definitely kind of a visual learner first.
Yeah.
So this meant like Disney movies, MGM musicals,
Mm-hmm.
the Rankin Bass stop motion animation
Yeah.
like Rudolph or whatever, Christmas
Yep.
time. And so there was a lot of that. Initially, I wanted to say that, it was the songs that Joe Raposo wrote for Sesame Street, which is an excellent, excellent book of songs. Like in retrospect, C is for Cookie, Sing a Song, Being Green, I mean, it's on par with like Burt Bacharach in terms of like really, really great songwriting. But, if I'm taking a look at this prompt and I'm looking into like the operative word remember, meaning like profoundly moved by, it's going to be fucking Disney soundtrack to Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I rinsed and repeated to filth as a kid to the point of like breaking the VCR. I think it is the deepest cut in terms of like the like Disney Renaissance era of, that whole thing starting in the 80s and 90s. Watching it as an adult in retrospect, it's a really fucked up movie. For all of its mature, like I don't know how it got a G rating from the MPAA. You got body dysmorphia like on like Quasimodo's end. You've got like sexual repression and lust. You've got like the Christian bureaucracy. You've got like medieval forms of torture. Like it's all kind of just like hanging out, and it still managed to be packaged into like a G movie that my parents somehow thought was like okay for me to
watch on repeat. Yeah.
But I was very profoundly moved by the music in this. The song that I chose was Out There, which is kind of in the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie. Okay. It's what we call like in musical theater, the I Want song, where the protagonist talks about how much they hate their life and how much they want it to change. And so it's Quasimodo locked up in Notre Dame, yearning to be a free man in Paris, unfettered and alive. I mean, I was profoundly, it was like the first instance of goosebumps that I've really ever had. I mentioned earlier that I was like recording with Jordan Reyes in France. We've been working on a new project together that's going to see the light of day pretty soon. But we start our mornings in the studio in the kitchen, usually with like Disney soundtracks, like over coffee and shit.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Before and before like going downstairs to the studio and recording like some like black metal adjacent stuff. It's just like a really good like dichotomy. I love this movie to this day, this music. I think the biggest reason why I chose this one though is there is an anecdote that keeps recurring with my family about a trip to Walt Disney World that we took around the time of this movie's release. This was back when like they did like a lot more live theater. They did like the stage show of like whatever film was being like promoted at the time. And so at this time it was like Hunchback, and I was like straight up sobbing.
Oh wow.
Through the entire fucking thing. And they say to this day, like, this was the moment that we knew that you were going to be a musician. I'm like, okay. Maybe I was just like crying a lot. This is a good segue. This is a good segue, actually.
Oh, this is well, so the funny thing I'm ruining your segue.
You're fine.
I don't think I've ever actually seen this because I think it came out. So I'm 14 years older than you. Right. It came out when I was already a teenager, and I was like, "Fuck, I don't, I'm not
for sure."
Because like, but like one of my very first memories is Somewhere Out There from An American Tale.
Oh,
and
also great.
I have a tape somewhere of I was probably 4, my sister was 7, of us singing it. Like,
Ah.
and that's
One of the great power ballads. Who is that who's singing it? It's like Jennifer Warnes, I think.
Yeah, is it?
Peebo Bryson, maybe? I'm not sure.
But it's like, yeah. And so,
wow.
But yeah, that period of, I mean, there's a lot of, I think depending on what age you are, everybody has like one of those Disney songs, or a lot of people have one of those Disney songs.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
You know, like for my wife, it's the Part of Your World from Little Mermaid.
Also a great I Want song.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but you've got me, like your description of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'm like, so my daughter's 11. I'm like, she's currently obsessed with Lord of the Rings, so I don't know if I can get her to watch anything else. And we had this conversation last night, although she might like this, is that like between the books and the movies she's really into right now, she's really into like fantasy and stuff, and she's really into things that are sad and violent. Which is
this would probably be age appropriate at this point. I mean, I was like 4 or 5 when this film came out.
But she's probably, well, and it's, you know, it sounds, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I want to watch it now. Again, your description, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
It's pretty wild. It's out there. It's out there. Yeah.
Boom. All right. Well, we know that you go to live action Hunchback of Notre Dame and can't keep it in. But nowadays, what's a song that'll make you cry?
I had to narrow down this list a great deal. I love the relationship between music and crying. I think it is one of the great utilities of music in general.
Yes.
I mean, especially in the smartphone generation, you can literally just be like, Siri, put on Roy Orbison, and then it will just take you there. I narrowed it down to 2. The first one that I chose, and I'm sure the listeners will agree with me on this, is The Kiss by Judy Sill, which, I mean, other than being one of the most strikingly beautiful songs ever written by a human being, for me, I think what really gets me and what can make me cry just like in general is thinking about the personal history of the person singing. And just this sort of like, if I can hear this like irrepressible weight on the behalf of like the person making it, then it's usually going to take me there. Right. But yeah, I mean, thinking about her, you know, troubled history, coming from a broken home, running away, sort of resorting to sex work and bank robbery, and then, you know, you get picked up and dropped by David Geffen within the span of like 2 or 3 years. You spend time in reform school and then die of a OD. You know, it's like, this is one of those discographies that is so like flash in a pan to me. And just sort of the structure of this song really, really speaks to me. It's like a love song, obviously, but it seems to be one not about, you know, kind of like earthly love, but one about like kind of giving yourself up to higher powers or something like that, which like I don't really know of a lot of like secular music that really does that. For sure. So like, I don't know. There's also like something that I care a lot about. I mean, in terms of, I mean, this whole point of like personal history and hearing that in the voice, you know, I mean, it's the same thing that like attracts me to like, say, a Karen Dalton or, you know, a Jackson Frank, you know, it's this like, there seems to be this like, and I sort of wrote a song about this on the record, actually, about this sort of cruelty that comes with posthumous praise in a way. And like, you know, the act of listening to something when their like entire body of work is kind of past them and cut off, and how just sort of fucked up that is. I'm thinking about, I think a lot about, you know, those kind of ghosts when I'm listening to like a record like that, and that's where this stuff kind of moves me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is such a good point, especially with like with Judy Sill. It's where this music came from, and 50 years later now, we're all like sitting here like, oh, this is, and
Yeah.
it's like, man, if Judy Sill's spirit is somewhere out there like seeing this, she's just like, man, fuck you guys.
Yeah. No, exactly. I often think about like of all the, kind of erstwhile musicians that you know, thinking about what they could have done after
Mm-hmm.
this. I would have loved to see like I mean certainly the like third record, the unfinished one that like Jim
Mm-hmm.
O'Rourke kind of like got out the door
Right.
after years. I mean the music on that is like truly striking, but I kind of think about like what she would have looked like in the 80s and
Yeah.
like kind of a little bit more of like a new agey maybe there's like a synth palette kind of
Right.
in there and I'm like fuck that would be the record that I would want to hear. Like I don't know, my imagination runs wild with these kinds of things kind of
Yeah.
beside myself, but yeah, I love Judy Sill. She's one of the all timers for me.
Absolutely.
The other one that
Speaking of Alzheimer's,
the other one that came to mind for this was Travesia by Milton Nascimento. For me, this is definitely more of like a musical landscape thing. I didn't pay attention to like the lyrics of this thing until like very actually preparing for this and like
right.
looking up the Portuguese. But it's
Same.
but it's also like it's all about Milton's voice, this sense of like yearning that comes with that. And just like I don't know, he always sings so like straight, no vibrato in the voice, but like manages to still like have just this like there's just an emotional weight to it that is really kind of like indescribable. For me too, this is also a testament of Eumir Deodato's strength as like an arranger. I
Yeah.
think it was only after this came out that he started working with like Sinatra, and then like much later on, Bjork tagged him to do like the arrangements on like Homogenic, which like is kind of really quite the arc. But
right.
just the I don't know, just this is just a example of like arrangement really moving me to the point of tears. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like with this song, there's the way that it like in the beginning, there's this tension, and it's like building to this moment that's just gonna sort of crush you.
Yeah,
and it's done in a way that like even though it's coming, you're still not ready for it. And then like once the chorus kind of like it's this soaring, heartbreaking, and it's just like all right, I'm done.
It's like
on the
literally,
floor.
it's profound. The lyrics, like there was like an English language version that came out, like the CTI record that like Creed Taylor put out. It was like his first thing in the States or whatever. There was like an English version that's like has like the most corny lyrics about there's a bridge between you and me and like all of this. And that was kind of the version that I knew for a long time. But I'm like pulling up the translation of like the chorus is like, I let my voice out on the road. I don't want to stop. My way is made of stones. How am I supposed to dream? A dream made of breeze that the wind comes to kill. I'll put an end to my weeping. I'll wish to die. Like under this, like, major tonality, you just have these like fucked up, like Clarice Lispector ass, like lyrics, like over this thing. And it's just incredible. That duality. It's like Scott Walker in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Love it. I love it
too. Oh, I like, man. And he's like what, 80 in his 80s still?
Yeah. I almost caught the Clube de Esquina like farewell tour. And I missed it like an asshole. But yeah, he has a record coming out very soon with Esperanza Spalding, a duo record that was like not on my radar until like very recently. I actually think I found out about it preparing for this.
Wow.
But
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so
Okay,
that will be something to look forward to. Definitely.
absolutely. Okay, well, on the flip side, what'll put you in a better mood?
Okay. So Pat Metheny group, I'm just going to tell you right now, they're like my Grateful Dead. I
Oh, I love it.
love that band to the ends of the earth. I think Metheny is extremely misunderstood and is kind of a proponent of this kind of music that I love, where things are just so cheesy to the point of being like transcendent. And once you can like let go of like the actual like saccharine
Mm-hmm.
texture and like really lean into the harmony, it's like the best collection of notes and like chords that you could, you know,
Right.
ever come up with. So, you know, I mean, it's the same. I mean, other favorite bands of mine that do this are like Prefab Sprout and Scritti Politti, but like in the jazz like improv
Mm-hmm.
realm, it's definitely this for me. I think, yeah, the partnership between him and Lyle Mays
Yeah.
is like really one of the great fusions of fusion. You know, their ECM run. I mean, his
Oh.
entire work with like ECM, starting with Bright Size Life and then um, going into like the group records all the way until this record that I pointed out, the First Circle. I picked the
Mm-hmm.
title track from this, and yeah, it's just a serotonin boost for
Yeah.
me. The sense of like harmony and you know, the trajectory of the parts. I mean, it blows my mind. You know, this was back in the days when like the way the ECM records were tracked, you would do like 2 days of recording and 1 day of mixing, and that was it. And so like how they managed to
It's
pull this off
bananas.
with this
Right.
like production landscape really like boggles the mind. Um, yeah, Lyle Mays' piano solo in this and the,
Oh.
you know, arc of it is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think that he's like, I mean, I know that he's like appreciated, but like really like canonized in this level of like, and even in the history of like, you know, kind of more like ambient adjacent like
Yep.
keyboard, I think he's like, I would like to see him among the ranks of like a Sakamoto or like something like that. And I'm still waiting for him to have that kind of renaissance or
I totally
moment.
know. Yeah, I know. I mean, like, even when he passed away a few years ago,
Yeah.
like, I don't feel like I hardly anybody like not noticed, but like, you know, like when Sakamoto, like, and I get it, like, whatever, but like it was, and this isn't a great measure of things, but like, you know, your whole fucking social media feed is just like Sakamoto, oh my god, Sakamoto,
Yeah,
Sakamoto,
it's
Sakamoto.
true.
Understandably so, but like when Lyle Mays, it was like two or three people or something. You know, what I mean, it was
Yeah, it was like all the heads in like
yeah, it's like
upstate New York
ECM
and
guys.
Western Mass, and that's it. You know, which is like cool. I mean,
Yeah,
that's my crew. But
but I
yeah,
agree with you. Like, I think he is really underappreciated, and yeah, yeah, I really love this record too. I don't know who I like the way you put the like this is your Grateful, like your version of the Grateful Dead. I don't know who my
yeah,
version of the Grateful Dead is, but I understand this. It's close. It's more this than it is the Grateful Dead.
yeah, definitely. I've yet to have the Grateful Dead moment in my life. Probably closer to when I'm your age is when that's gonna
I'm
happen
still
for
waiting.
me.
I've been trying.
Really?
Yeah, but it's still just, you know, and that's fine. Like
Yeah.
when we did I did this with Shane Parrish, like, and this was, I think it was in the like the Patreon section, and we were talking about stuff that, you know, he didn't like or whatever. He was like, I always just phrase it with, I don't have access to that yet. Not I don't like I don't have access to that. It's like
I love
I
Shane. I
I
love
love
his way of I
I know.
love his way of phrasing things
I know. I was
sometimes.
like, that's
This
perfect.
isn't my
So
business. You know?
yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's sick. I do want to point one more thing about this particular track. The star of this for me is um Pedro Aznar, the vocalist of the
Mm.
band. I mean, it's this very similar thing to like, I mean, they probably got it from Nascimento, if I'm being like totally honest. This like back of the mix kind
Yeah.
of like vocal melody that happens, this similar kind of like yearning. I mean, that guy's story is that he was in this like Argentinian prog band, this like sort of super group in the 70s called Seru Hiran, that they were basically like the genesis of Argentina. And he like was probably like a teenager when he was in that band, and he like ripped on the fretless bass. Those records are like really good. And then I think Pat picked him up when they were like touring South America together, like in like the early 80s, and then like told him to join the band. He had to be like 22, 23, but he just is kind of the star of that song. I love that vocal melody. I love its placement in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
It just hairs on the back of my neck. I don't know.
No, that's a good call out. God, started as a bass player, ended up as became a vocalist on.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The Pat Metheny. Yeah. What I wouldn't give for that art.
Well, okay. Everyone's favorite question, Nick. What is objectively the greatest song of all time?
Okay, so I could have chosen a lot of this other songs like on the list for this,
sure.
But what I really tapped into was like the latter part of this question, like the whole like alien comes down to Earth. Mm-hmm. What do you show them? Thing. And this was kind of like an instantaneous Hunter, who I live with, and does like the art on my records and stuff. He was like, why didn't you pick like God Only Knows, or Wichita Lineman, or whatever? I was just like, I'm just speaking my like truth at the time.
Yeah.
And my truth is I'm Mandy Fly Me by 10cc. This is a band actually that I came to relatively late. It only has been in like the past year or so that I have really, sat with them more in my life. I think it was like Mari who like really got me down this whole rabbit hole. For a long time, it was my relationship to this band was, kind of limited to I'm Not in Love, which masterpiece. I could have chosen that too. But, this was, I think this is like a really good example of like kind of the canonical like multi-movement song in the like file next to Bohemian Rhapsody, Paranoid Android, Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. And just like this kind of triptych style, kind of an up and down sort of thing. What I love about this band, I mean, this song does for me like what all AOR should do in terms of like production and performance. There's just the landscape of it is like very kinetic. The way they seem to operate sort of as a band is more akin to like a cinematic production house to me. You got Godley and Krem on one side being the more like comedic like story, like let's do the 10-minute suite about like about like a night in Paris or whatever. And then you have kind of like Eric Stewart and Graham Goldman on the other end, like actually holding down kind of the down to earth, like these are the actual songs. And I think this is like I don't know who was the writer of this one, but I think this is one of these rare things where like both sides of the binary come together. And it just merges in this way that's like, yes, like, and it's just the fact that it's like a song about like looking at a, airline advertisement and then suddenly you're like in a plane crash. It's just like, it has the imagination of like a horny 14-year-old.
Right.
God, I just love it so much.
Yeah, no, I no argument. I think that's a great answer. What was you had another one though that you threw in there too?
I did. Yeah, I didn't want this list to pass without mentioning my second mother, Joni Mitchell. I mean, my relationship with her music runs very, very deep, and always has. But I chose the version of In France They Kiss on Main Street from like the Shadows and Light record. And for me, this was an answer that was more about the band than anything else. Pat and Lyle are in it, so there you go.
Yeah.
But then you have Jocko and Don Elias and Michael Brecker kind of like running it out. And this is the band that this is the live band that, you know, Access to a Time Machine. I would want to see.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely peak musicianship. And yeah, I have a really, you know, firm love of the, you know, mid to late 70s, like jazz, you know, kind of like the folk jazz era that started, I guess, with, really started coming to a head with like, the sort of beginnings of it were Court and Spark, I suppose. And then, died on a hill with Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, you know, which is sad because that record actually is very good. It's just like the visuals completely, like the blackface completely ruins it.
Yeah.
They just did like a recent reissue, and I think they finally changed the cover of it, but it's like some like wolf gnawing on a bone or some shit. It's like, oh God. It's almost like I almost prefer the other one before it, even if it's you know, very on the nose. But yeah, I love Joni. I love this live album in particular. When I was getting really into when I bought my own fretless, I used to, you know, practice to this to get my chops up. In the first year or two of the pandemic. Yeah, I love Joni very much.
Yeah, no, I was curious, like why this version, and that answer, it totally makes sense because the band is
definitely
much better.
Definitely.
All right, well, what's a song you used to love but now you hear it not so much?
Okay, I wanted to choose something. I don't know. I mean, my first impulse, which I know other people have done on this program, has been to my own music.
Sure.
But I wanted to choose something that kind of like illustrated, you know, my whole relationship to like the chill wave or like the early 2010s, like electronic thing. And there was a time when I Never Learned to Share by James Blake was like my lifeblood. And, you know, I was very impressed with this record, and, you know, having been really immersed in like the, you know, RNS Records, you know, sort of like abstract club stuff that he was doing, you know, leading up to this CMYK and all of that. But this, I recently revisited this. I mean, I thought hard about this question. I don't want to like, I don't ever want to like discriminate. And this is just like a really clunky and corny song. The parts the parts just don't seem to fit together at all. You have that like loop station demonstration like in the beginning.
It was his first month with the loop station. No.
Yeah. It's so funny because I remember seeing him at the time with his band at Metro in Chicago when I was like still a student over there. And every time he started playing the song, you know, he would launch into like, and then like you would hear the crowd start like losing it. And that like every time the loop would circle back, you would hear like, woo, like off mic from like the Shure 57 or whatever. So it was just like, my brother, woo, don't speak to me, my brother, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, the build up and the drop is so much goofier than I remember. It just escalates so quickly. And then there's that like baseline sequence that literally sounds like you know, his cat walked across its like prophet or something. That Yeah, it's also just like I think what's also kind of silly is the relationship between the title of the song and the lyrics. Like, does his brother and his sister no longer speak to him because he never learned to share? Yeah, it's a burning question that I have. But yeah, I mean, this is like indicative of like a structure that I was very of making music that I was very happy to escape and get away from.
Sure.
You know, this whole idea of like the drop and this tension and release and this kind of I don't know, after a while it just gets like very boring. There are more interesting ways of like organizing sound. I would rather like listen to, you know, 5 or 6 hours of like Rob and Sean from Audacur just like finding the little nooks and crannies in their Max MSP patches than I would ever, you know, spend time with something like this again.
Yep.
I actually opened up. I very nearly opened for James Blake on like, I think one of the last tours that he did for this record. I didn't end up doing it because I was still in school. And my manager at the time, who, you know, I haven't really spoken to since we stopped working together, was like, you know, you're getting these offers to open up for like James Blake, the most exciting name in electronic music, and you're not going to take it. Like, I'm like, it's literally, I mean, I ended up leaving school to, you know, tour full time and you know, record for a little bit. But yeah, I'm kind of glad that to this day that I said no to that. I think I would have gotten a little further deep down the you know, I would have been swept up to the chill wave before it crashed to shore.
Man. All right, well what's the song that people hate but you don't care, you love it anyway?
John Mayer's My Stupid Mouth, without a question. I didn't even have to think about it. So like Room for Squares is a extremely criminally underrated record in terms of like its like songcraft. I mean, I would sooner compare it to, you know, a Prefab Sprouter and Everything But the Girl in terms of like the scope of like its songwriting. There's like really some like truly I think it's just disguised as under this like, you know, sort of adult alternative like early aughts sort of landscape. But I don't know, speaking more personally, John Mayer actually grew up very close to me in Connecticut, like probably about like 15 or 20 minutes away. The proverbial the halls of his high school that he ran down on that like first single, like no such thing. They could have been my school, you know. But yeah, I mean, this is just like, I don't know. I find this song to be, and always have, you know, very catchy. It's one of the better songs about making a fool of yourself to a significant other or somebody that you're seeing. And just the attitude of it, while being very teenage, doesn't stop the music from actually like progressing to, you know, a more sophisticated place. I mean, I could give a shit about like pretty much anything to follow after this record, and like I don't really understand his latching onto the Dead feels a lot like Brandy Carlisle and Joni to me. It's just like why are you why are you upstaging these legends kind of in this way? But but yeah, a lot of love for Room for Squares. Still waiting for the critical reappraisal. John Mayer, man. I don't know.
Well, I I don't know how much John Mayer I've actually heard, and that's not like, oh, I listen to such obscure things.
I'm so surprised.
But to me, like when I was listening to this, I was like, man, this just feels like being in college in the '90s.
Yes, exactly.
Like it captures that so, and it was like this instant specific feeling I had, and that to me kind of speaks to like that's not easy to do, like to So respect to at least to this song. I haven't listened to the whole record. I'll give it a chance, but like
you don't have to.
We'll see, but I just it was such a visceral reaction to that, and I was just like, damn, like I am like back there.
Yeah,
and
like that guitar is just like
exactly.
It might as well be like that one Incubus song. Yeah, so good.
Okay, on a totally different tangent. I mean, maybe John Mayer's is a real romantic, but what is the most romantic song?
This was also very easy for me. This is "Bless the Telephone" by Labi Siffre.
My goodness,
you're familiar with his music, right?
Yes,
master. He is such a hero of mine. This song in particular is romantic to me for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's super short.
Yeah.
It's over and done, I think, in like a minute 40.
Yeah,
which
it's like under 2 minutes.
Yeah, nothing worse than a love song that overstays its welcome. Mm-hmm. If you are gonna take that long to like say I love you, then you probably shouldn't be writing music. But it's just like it doesn't get more like pithy than this. The palette is acoustic guitar and voice, which you can't get more romantic than that. Yep. That's basically a candlelit dinner on the beach.
Yep.
And it's a song about a phone call with somebody that you are, very deeply falling in love with, and just hearing from them over the course of the day, like changes your day, and like probably makes it. I mean, we've all probably felt that at one point in our lives. And the less obvious thing for me in terms of this song, and this is more, I guess, a comment on like the performance and the execution of it rather than the actual writing, is when I hear this, I kind of lean into this overwhelming sense of like queer infatuation with like whoever he's singing about, in this kind of like very classic like U-Haul lesbian, like go on the 5-day date and then suddenly you're moving in like after like a month or so, like just deep enmeshment and like holy shit, I'm so in love with you. And you just hear that so firmly on this particular song. And just knowing about his history, knowing that he was kind of an anomaly in the scene, being like a queer black like folk singer, non-monogamous. He lived like in a menage a trois with like his two husbands in Wales for like a long time, and just knowing that kind of queerness like existed, that far back in the industry. I don't know. I go back to this song and like the Crying, Laughing, Loving, Lying record quite a bit. I mean, that is also like a record that makes me cry, definitely. I will also point out that speaking personally, without like peeking into my diary like too much, if you put this on a playlist for like a new lover or like somebody that you're seeing, they will notice and they will point it out, and with any luck they will be very, very won over by it. Actually, I was going to actually put in a quote from Lobby in the packaging of Hindsight.
Oh wow.
We ended up going with Wendy's liner notes instead, and I think that was the right choice. But he said something in the BBC interview. I have it up here in my notes that I think is like the realest thing that a musician has ever said, the thing that I align with most. And it's basically like, I would like the audience to not know who I was and not to see me. In all forms of music, in fact, not to know the artist, not to see the artist, not to know who wrote the song or the piece, but just to hear the music completely devoid of anything and evaluate the music on its merits. I don't believe in giving the audience what they want anyway. I believe in giving them my best and making them like it. You don't make hit records that way, but you can sleep at night.
Dang.
That's like the best thing I've ever heard.
That's incredible.
So yeah, I should have included that.
Man.
Whatever, the record's out next week.
I'm gonna yeah, it's a little late. I don't know. I'll include the quote in the show notes. Send me the quote. I'll put it in it's not much, but it's something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wow. Like I have like such admiration for him as it is.
Yeah.
But that just like amped it up.
Yeah.
Times 100. That's dang. I'm gonna be thinking about that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's
definitely
incredible. Yeah. Like this is such a beautiful song, and it's it's short and to the point, and like you can like all the like the emotion of it, like the timbre of his voice, and it's like all on like it's there. Like, you know, there. Like, I mean, it's like we were talking about with like Judy Sill or someone, like the story, like their story comes through in like their voice or in the music, and like
absolutely,
this is one of those things, and it's
there's just such intention behind it. That's what I care about at the end of the day. It's just, nothing without intention.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about this. We keep talking about this and talk about him. Do a whole podcast about him. Somebody should do a whole podcast about him.
Yeah.
But what's a song that changed your perspective on an artist, either for better or for worse?
So I chose Earl Sweatshirt's "The Mint" off his record, Some Rap Songs, but which is definitely like the highlight of an album that I would consider to be probably my favorite of the past decade. Some Rap Songs. I was in high school going into college when like Odd Future blew up. I was like a senior in high school. I think like, if I remember the timeline correctly, like Yonkers came out the week of like prom or something.
Wow.
And that really ages me or makes me younger or whatever. This was but I remember, I kept an ear to the ground in terms of like what they were doing. And also just like, I mean, that was like one of the first real instances of like, the sort of DIY mixtape culture, like really like progressing to like a high standard, the whole Tumblr era. And I remember seeing them at Metro in Chicago. I saw a lot of formative shows at that venue. And it being the most claustrophobic pit that I have ever been in my life. I lost like half my clothing, like my shirt, like, ripped open. And this was still like, this was when Earl was still at that like boarding school in Samoa. So he wasn't in the picture, but he was still kind of this like, had this air of like mystique and, and so, I mean, I kind of like checked out after that show. I mean, I kept eyes on, what they were doing, as Blonde came out and, all of that. But I think this was the record that, where I really, started paying attention again. I think that him getting involved with this whole, the whole like abstract hip hop scene in New York really worked in his favor. Mike in navy blue and standing on the corner, and just sort of this lo-fi thrown together like approach to production. I don't know. I mean, it is kind of a similar sort of intention in the way that the Lobby Seafra song that we were talking about, but like it's not taking as much time in order to get there. It's like thrown together like haphazardly. And I think in terms of like some rap songs, I mean, obviously he was like dealing with the grief of losing his father, Rob Willie, who was like the South African poet laureate, and just thinking about it, like it has this feel, right, of like a sketchbook as opposed to an album. It's the kind of thing that I would expect from like a Graham Lampkin or like somebody in that world, not necessarily like a rapper.
Yeah.
And I was just so taken by this. I remember I was actually finishing the last Mr. Lies record around its release, and I was really struggling with sequencing, and I had like, I don't know, I had more material than like I needed, but I really knew that I wanted to like pare it down. And this record is like over and done in like 20 minutes,
Right.
It flashes by. Another instance of things not outstaying their welcome, and kind of convinced me to like really make some editing choices the work that I was working on. So yeah, I mean, I would consider this to be like one of the more potent maturations of like an artist of like my generation, like in the past few years. I love the way his voice sounds on this particular song that I chose.
Same. Oh, man.
His relationship to the beat, his sense of like internal rhyme schemes, his cultural recall. It's never sounded better.
Yeah. I had like I was older, but I had a similar thing with like Odd Future where I don't want to say I checked out, but it was just like I wasn't paying as much attention, and it was like this and Blonde, I think, were the things that kind of, which Blonde, I mean, like that's a different, Frank Ocean was part of it, but it wasn't the same. Like, but Earl was, one of the core. It was like Earl and Tyler, and this, when I heard this record when it came out, I was just like, oh man. Like you said, it was like, because it was like the really early stuff, like there was a lot of things really great about it, but this was just like hearing an art, it's like, oh, like we talked about, it's like, oh, this is like an artist that really found themselves and like really and it's just when it happens, it's just like it's such a powerful thing. I mean, it's yeah, and this track is so good. It's so fucking good.
It's so fucking good. I mean, I also really love that one that's like more of a interlude that's like interspersing like his dad giving a reading and his mom giving like a lecture. It just tears my heart out.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, it's incredible record.
So good.
All right. We've talked about lyrics a lot already, but
yeah.
What are your favorite lyrics?
I'm sure the listeners will agree with me when I say, I need you more than want you, and I want you for an old time. From Wichita Lineman, Glenn Campbell, originally popularized. I learned very recently, because I've done a huge deep dive on Jimmy Webb this year, and he was 21 years old when he wrote that song.
Holy shit. Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Like, who fucking hurt you at that age?
Yeah.
Like,
oh my
I didn't
God,
even know what heartbreak was until like a year or two ago. So like, I can really only imagine, like,
yeah.
And I don't know, this is just, I mean, it's the whole song. This would have been my nominee for objectively greatest song
I
of
was
all
gonna
time.
say, yeah, it could have
but
been.
but like, and like, I don't know. I have a lot of love for Glenn Campbell and their songwriting and Jimmy Webb's like partnership, like in general. But yeah, I mean, this is just like the ultimate couplet to kind of emphasize a need more than if you need someone more than you want them, it like it poses the question of what your life is like when you're left alone.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I just can't believe how young he was. That's like some Arthur Rimbaud shit. It's like, how are you that young and coming up with that? But yeah, I mean, a lot of like the California music, like at this time, like I don't know, like towards kind of, I mean, this Hindsight record, I hope to be kind of like a first of a series of like songwriter records, kind of in that sort of style. But I've been spending a lot of time with like the California stuff from this era, and it's like there is such a sense of like romantic mindfulness sort of in this music. I mean, you could cite this line, but you could also cite Brian Wilson saying like, I may not always love you, but as long as there are stars above you, you'll never need to doubt it. It's just this sense of ultimate self-awareness of like, and I don't know how, I mean, it was probably LSD and like any number of things, but just like the fact that, you can rise at that level of like emotional nuance is just like incredible to me. There is this really, really great, speaking of records that make me cry, this Glenn Campbell album that is him singing all songs of Jimmy Webb that was like done in like the mid 70s. It's called Reunion, and it has some of his other compositions on there. There's like a version of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which is like another song that tears me out.
Yep.
But that is like a really good example to me of like a songwriter and like muse or singer sort of pairing, a la like Bacharach and Warwick, or like Bacharach and Elvis Costello even. Like it's just like he found the exact right siphon to express his ideas, and this song is like creme de la creme as far as that goes.
It's the pinnacle of that. Yeah, no, what an astonishing lyric. I mean, it's just 21. Dude,
I know.
Broke my brain with that.
Most of his songs are written, I mean, if you think about it, because it's like, you have Phoenix, which is not far after that. You have like Up and Away. You have, Galveston. These songs were all like very close.
Yeah.
So he got all of that stuff done before he was like 25, which is just like, again, like, I don't know.
I can't even. Yeah, I mean, I love the Rimbaud comparison. I had a band I was in. We did like it was like a noise spoken word thing version of A Season in Hell.
Naturally,
and, right? Exactly, and it's actually still like one of my favorite things I've ever done. But like,
sick.
I remember thinking like he was like Arthur Rimbaud wrote this when he was 17. When I was I was 17. Right. I was making the worst shit imagined, writing the dumbest poetry.
Right.
Fuck. What am I doing with my life? Oh God. Okay. Woo. Okay. Well, what's the song that people love but you don't get it?
I chose "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses. There's not much to say about this one. I just don't really see what the big deal is. I've always found the intro riff to be clunky. It's never hit my ears in the right way. So are the lyrics. Like,
lyrics are real bad.
Like, why are we measuring pain in ounces? You know, like surely, gallons. But Yeah,
If
I
your
don't
pain
know.
is only in ounces, you've had a fucking good life, Axel.
Oh, Brad, there is a story that I can tell about this song, actually.
Oh.
Oh my God. It involves one of the, it was like a childhood gig that was like one of the worst that I ever played. Oh, I'm so excited. So, in my, in my hometown of New Canaan, Connecticut, there was like a teen center where a lot of like the dances and battle of the bands and like band nights happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was behind the town hall. It was called the Outback Teen Center. Somehow they used the same like font and typeface as the steakhouse chain, which like I never really understood how they got away with that.
Yeah.
But it was, it was where all the dances happened. It was like where the skaters would congregate in the parking lot
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And, back in like middle school, I was, playing in a lot of like different, bands and stuff. And, I don't know, there was this kid in my orbit in, the same class as me. His name was Robbie. His father was the like first selectman of like the town. This was the kid that like owned an American like Gibson SG by the time he was like 11 or 12. I don't even think he like ended up like doing a career in music. I think he worked for like Yelp or some shit like that now, but like but we were definitely like in each other's orbit for a bit, and this was someone who like was very AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, like the Canon. Meanwhile I was like already on my like solo project shit, like, listening to Radiohead and Bjork because my like babysitter introduced it to me when introduced me to like Kid A when I was like 10. And like, and so there was this gig where I was like playing alone. I had just bought like a Korg Chaos pad. And, on occasion we would, Robbie and I and his band, like I would come over. My balls hadn't quite dropped yet, so I could still sing like the Axl Rose stuff like pretty well.
Yeah.
And so like I end up like playing this gig, and I'm like running my guitar through like the Chaos pad using like the internal like drum machine on it. I end up stepping on like the power cable and like fucking up the housing like halfway through my set. And like Robbie and his like bandmates, we're all like 11, 12 years old.
Right.
And they're just like, dude, you're eating shit. You're just like eating shit so bad. And Robbie goes on stage and is like, we're going to rescue your set. We're going to rescue your set right now. He goes on stage. The amps and stuff are like already set up. They launch into Sweet Child of Mine, and they expect me to sing it. They expect me to sing it right then and there. And that was probably the moment where I was like, I don't get this song. I don't get the appeal of this song. But of course, like all of the like middle school, like, people, schoolers that were there, like were like won over by it. I end up singing it. Like, I'm just like, whatever. And yeah, Robbie, like during the guitar solo, he drops to his knees, like right next to me. Like completely like upstaging me like Brandy Carlisle and Joni.
Yeah.
Like and to this day when I hear this song, I mean that's why I don't get this song.
There you go.
I'm really glad that I remembered this story. I knew I was onto something with this.
Oh, God. What's the song you most recently fell in love with?
Okay, this is like the other side of like 70s guitar music, that this is like actually the most transcendental thing that I've ever heard. This is a band from Fort Worth, Texas. They only released one album. They're called Space Opera. And this is, I guess it would be like the single on the record, but I'm not exactly sure. It's called Holy River. My story with this was that a couple of years ago, Wendy and I were like approving a test pressing for like one of the many records that we work on together. I was like at their apartment. At the time, they were living with Jeremy Viner, who used to be the clarinetist in Bing and Ruth. And he, I think, came home halfway through, and like a few friends were like also over. And like after we were like, okay, like the record's sounding good, we can approve it. It kind of devolved into like an orange wine fueled listening party or whatever. He put this record on, and my jaw was like instantly to the floor. I was like, what is this? It is like, I mean, the fact that this record is like out of print is like really kind of a tragic thing, because it is like, it is the most divine intersection of like a prog thing and like a country rock thing that I have ever heard in my life. And it predates, I think, like so much great guitar music.
I don't understand how this is from 1973.
Yeah, it is like the fuzz tone. I think they're like tuning their 12 strings into fifths on this one. It's just like, it kind of has like a post-hardcore feeling to it. The singer sounds like Alex G. There's just like, what is it? I have no idea, you know, what's going on with this.
I don't, if somebody played for this for me and they're like, oh yeah, this is a new record that just came out, like this, I would be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This, like, I would be, when I first heard it, it was like, I don't know, it was a couple years ago.
And cool.
Yeah.
So it's been the same. Hell yeah. That's nice
like
to
the
hear.
Same experience of like jaw on the floor of like, hey, where has this been? Like it's, you know, it's 50 years old and I'm never, and you know, I like to think I know about a lot of obscure, weird shit, but like this was never on my radar until recently. And then it was just, and like you said, I don't know how this. I think I read that like only one of the members maybe is still alive. So maybe
I think they're all gone now for the most part.
But God, somebody somehow needs to do like people need to hear this record.
If I had the economic means and I wasn't in as much, you know, debt from projects and stuff that I'm working on, like I would start a label just to reissue this. You know, I think it's a bona fide masterpiece front to back. I think it's like a really important, like lost relic in the realm of like, you know, 70s, like AOR, like, I heard this record at this listening party and then, I forgot about it. I mean, I didn't forget about it in the sense of, I must have like wrote it down somewhere and like forgot to soul seek it. And then last year, Wendy has like a really incredible, like, birthday party at the end of the year that's like always like 3 generations worth of like New York improviser people like hanging out or whatever. And it was like right before Jeremy moved out. He moved back to Berlin, and I was like, what was that record that you played me? And then and then, you know, at that point I was like, oh, I remember Lester St. Louis and I were just like vibing the fuck out. And then I ended up like soul seeking it and getting like a $50 copy on Discogs, and now it's become like an all-timer for me. Love space opera. More people, everybody who's listening to this needs to check out that band if they don't know them.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, what's the sexiest song?
The sexiest song, Small Hours, John Martin. I could have chosen any song that this man has made. He radiates masculinity, or at least did for like a long time. And you know, he's exactly my type. He's a bear icon, you know. But the thing with this one, the sexiness is you know, not one of like promiscuity or like a down badness. It's the kind of intimacy that you get with like someone, you know, a lover that you like can have like a comfortable silence with. And, you know, I mean, it's all in the palette. The fact that it was recorded outdoors, the fact that, you know, you have that like Echoplex, you know, guitar delay on it, the Yamaha organ. It's like Steve Winwood, I think, like just like very quietly, just like shredding on a Moog in the back. It's just like it's like, you know, it's like the pillow talk that you don't, and like the fooling around that you like don't want to end, that could like last, you know, forever.
Yeah. Oh God, it's so
yeah. The fact that like the voice comes in halfway through,
and it's kind of whispered, and it's kind of
like it's like it doesn't say more than it has to, and yeah, it's magic. I love that song.
It could be. You can make a pretty good argument. Like, at least I think, Catch Me in the Right Mood, and I'll tell you, this is the greatest song ever.
Like, yeah. It's definitely in the top 10 or 20 for me.
Yeah, I love it. Oh man. But no, I think that's really good. But like, yeah, I don't think I'd specifically thought about this as like the sexiness of it, but when like listening to it in that context as I was prepping for this, it's like, oh yeah, and like everything you were saying, like it's this really like deeply intimate kind of sexiness. Not
which is like honestly my preferred form of sexiness at this point.
Yeah,
you know,
same.
I've had an entire life of gay guy stuff. Like give me some cuddling. You know what I mean?
Give me some cuddling and whisper some sweet nothings in my ear.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. What's the song that means the most to you?
So I chose Indiscipline by King Crimson. This is a song, you asked for something that, you know, either reminds you of someone that you love or, you know, a thing that you really care about. This is a song that reminds me of like multiple people of mine, you know, lovers, collaborators, you know, but for me, it's more about like the feeling. This to me is a song about the anxiety of making art, and then that kind of being transitioned into being fulfilled and very satisfied by it, which is like what it's all about right there.
Yep.
I mean, this song is about, I think Adrian Belew, for like the text of the song that he like used as lyrics, is like a letter that he got from his wife about like a painting that she was working on. And when you think about it kind of like under that length, the text becomes so much more loaded to me. And it's also indicative in like the actual like arrangements, the fact that like every member of the band seems to be like operating in a different time signature. Right. And it's like kind of like it's like a sonic representation of the wheels turning a little bit when you're like lost in the sauce of something.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's also like a malleability in the text. Like, I don't know how deep you are in terms of like King Crimson. Personally, I'm like only really invested in like the 80s stuff. But you know, when you look at like live performances of this, Belew never sings it the same way twice. You know, and there are performances where he'll, you know, be like, I'm playing little games, like not looking at it for, and then there will be other days where, you know, he's like, I looked at it for hours and hours and hours, you know, and it's like, he just stretches it to taffy, or like kind of molds this like, you know, body of text into like whatever he's like feeling at the time, which I think is like really irresistible. But yeah, in terms of like why it means the most to me, it's, you know, this is so much of the reason why I love making records for like other people. It's like when you see your friends like, or something that you've been working on really, really hard and like slaving over with somebody, when you see them start taking pride in their creations and being like, the light bulb going off and being like, oh fuck, I'm onto something here. This is it. That is why I do this.
Yeah.
And that is, I think what comes out for me, like in this song, like every time that, he sings, I wish you were here to see it. Like that is just like chills in the back of my spine every time.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
No, that is, I'm not like I am very surface level with King Crimson.
For sure.
But now, like, I'm really curious. I'm going to have to go like look up live versions of this because I love that like it's different every time. Like that's, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just, I think of Wendy, I think of Lucy, I think of Mari. I mean, I think of like the whole crew of people that I've been working with for a long time. And just like, when you reach that like certain point and that level of satisfaction, it's just like nothing better, honestly.
No, I completely agree. Okay, last question, big question. At least in this moment in time, what is your favorite song?
My favorite song of all time in any moment is After the Flood by Talk Talk, off Laughing Stock, which I would also say is my favorite record of all time. This is not a secret to like anybody. I have pointed this out time and time again. When I was working at Reverb, I, did like a really, really long deep dive on the making of these records. This is like, I would consider this particular record, I mean, pretty much everything from like Spirit of Eden to like the solo album. I would consider it to be kind of like my text as like a producer and like my guiding light in terms of like how the things have to be made. In terms of the spontaneity and the depth of arrangement, but also, designing something for yourself, or, for the crew that you're working with, where you are giving everybody as much freedom as possible. And it's this like first thought, best thought approach. It's like, let's just get all of these ideas down. Let's, play how you feel. And then let's, edit this, sort of later on. I don't want to ever, when I'm like making a record for somebody else, like, yes, I have a very particular way of like, I care about like trajectory and stuff. I want it to feel like, I want it to feel like a narrative arc and,
sure.
But like, I don't want to like stick my dick into, the project that I'm making. I want to give as much like air and breathing room for like, the people who are working on it to, get there. And I think this music really, really does that for me. I don't know what else. It has my favorite instrument of all time, the B3 organ on it. Like on the best possible way that you could like get the manuals and like the Leslie to work. And it's the testament of like, my favorite albums and my favorite music in general is stuff that like takes time to like understand, and it's never the same river twice. Like this is a record that I have been listening to like pretty much every week of my life. And I'm still like, I remember very vividly, the moment where it clicked for me. It was like the first tour of Europe that I ever did. I was taking an overnight train into Edinburgh. The sun was rising on the Scottish Highlands. I think it was this song that like came on, and I was like,
"Jeez,
holy fucking shit!" But yeah, I mean, it's like, but yeah, you have to be patient with this stuff. It's like, another example of a record like this is like, Spiritual Unity, by Eiler. Like you hear that for the first time and, it kind of feels like anarchy a little bit. The third time that you hear it, you start to listen to like Sonny Murray and, Eiler like listening to each other very well. And then by the time, it's like the best fucking thing you've ever heard. And I think, when you allow music to have that kind of patience on you like that, it's all the more rewarding. And Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That.
that is a beautiful place to end. This was such a good time. Holy shit! This was
What a
good time.
blast!
I know. It's like God.
I feel like this is going to be one of your longer. I think this is going to be one of your longer episodes.
I think so, but like it didn't feel like
man.
it. Like, I just looked at the clock. I was like, oh. But Hindsight out. Well, it's out now. Probably by the time this comes out, everybody should definitely check it out. Any shows or anything like in the works?
I'm actually. So I'm playing one tonight. Actually, at a this one. I'm doing one here, and then also in LA next weekend. And these are just like solo performances that I'm doing on like acoustic guitar and keyboards. I'm bringing my Wurlitzer with me tonight, but I will be introducing like the live band aspect of this for the first time at like TVI in the end of August. I need to look at the exact date for that, but that's going to be us as a 5-piece. So that'll be Stephen, Mari, and Lexi and Sarah and I, and then
awesome.
And Wendy and Mari will open as Wait, their new project, and as well as my friend Ron Shalom, who has a music and performance project called Minivan. It should be a really good night of music. I don't really know if there's going to be much shows after that. I'm just kind of waiting to see if the spaghetti sticks to the wall, and then deciding whether or not I want to tour. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm in a state of flux in life, so I will see. I will see where the apple falls.
Fair enough. Well, hey, thanks again for doing this. It was a blast.
Yeah, what a blast.
Once again, thank you to Nick Zanca for just going deep, man. Yeah, like we really got into it there. Again, Hindsight is out now on American Dreams. It's out on vinyl, digital formats. You can stream it, all those things. But you should throw a few bucks Nick's way, American Dreams way, and support the cause because it's a great record. As always, his picks, there's a link to the playlist in the show notes. And if you like this show and enjoy it and just, want to help out, leave a review and a rating. Helps fight the fucking algorithm. And, or even more, if you really love it and you got a little taste of what's in the Patreon section. Like I said, we let our hair down a little bit there. It gets a little fun. Patreon.com/Foxy Patreon.com/Foxy Digitalis. And for as little as $3 a month, you get that. You get the episodes a week early. For $5 a month, you get a whole lot more than that. So something to think about. Everybody who supports the cause, it means the world. And just, if you're listening, I appreciate it. Until next time, though, keep on listening to whatever the hell you want.